You use it every single day. You probably never think twice about it. But the toilet sitting in your bathroom right now went through one of the most fascinating and surprisingly ancient manufacturing processes still happening in factories today. We're talking about clay, river stones, liquid mud, and hands-on craftsmanship that takes almost 3 full days to complete, just to make something you flush. So today, we're going inside a traditional ceramic toilet factory to watch the entire process, from a pile of raw clay all the way to a finished, shiny white toilet ready to be shipped to your home. Let's get into it. It all starts with dirt, literally. The main ingredient in a ceramic toilet is clay, but not just any clay. Factories use a carefully chosen mix of different types of clay and mineral ores. You'll see workers shoveling from large, separate piles. One pile might be white kaolin clay, another might be a gray feldspar mineral, and another could be a reddish, iron-rich earth. Each one brings something different to the final product. The kaolin gives it strength. The feldspar helps it melt and fuse together during firing. The other minerals fine-tune the color and texture. Now here's where the precision begins. Before anything gets mixed, every material gets weighed on a big industrial scale. Workers load up a wheelbarrow, roll it onto the platform, and check the reading carefully. Getting the proportions exactly right is critical. Too much of one material and the toilet could crack in the kiln. Too little of another and the glaze won't stick properly. This step looks simple, but it's actually one of the most important in the entire process. Once weighed, workers wheel the loads over to a large opening in the factory floor. That opening leads down into an underground mixing chamber called a ball mill. They tip each wheelbarrow in, one after another. Clay, minerals, all of it goes in. But here's the interesting part. Right after the raw materials go in, workers start shoveling in something completely unexpected. Large, smooth river stones. These aren't decorative. They're the grinding media. When the drum starts spinning, these heavy stones tumble around inside and smash the raw minerals into a fine powder. It's a brilliantly simple system that's been used in pottery for centuries. Then the lid. After all that grinding, something amazing happens. Workers add water to the ball mill, and the whole mixture transforms into a smooth, creamy liquid called slip. Think of it like a very thick, very smooth clay milkshake. When the mill stops, workers open a large drain valve at the bottom, and this white liquid slip flows out into a big collection tank below. Workers stand by, stirring it constantly with long paddles to keep it from separating. The consistency has to stay perfectly even, not too thick, not too thin. The slip is the lifeblood of the entire process. Everything from here on depends on how good it is. Now, over in another part of the factory, a different kind of preparation is happening. Workers are cleaning and assembling large plaster molds, and these molds are remarkable things. A single toilet isn't made in one mold. It's made in pieces. The bowl is one mold. The tank. Once the molds are ready, it's time to pour. Workers use simple buckets. They dip them into the slip tank, scoop up a full load of liquid clay, and carefully pour it into the opening at the top of each mold. The slip flows in and fills every corner of the mold's interior. Then, everyone waits. This is where the magic of plaster molds comes in. Plaster is naturally porous, which means it slowly absorbs water from the liquid slip. As the water gets pulled out, a layer of solid clay starts forming on the inside walls of the mold. The longer the slip sits, the thicker that clay shell becomes. Workers check on the molds regularly, tapping them and measuring the wall thickness to know when it's right. When the shell is thick enough, usually after several hours, workers tip the molds upside down and let the remaining liquid clay pour back out into the tank. Nothing gets wasted. That excess slip goes straight back in to be used again. Now, inside that mold, there is a hollow clay shell, fragile, soft, and still slightly wet. This is called greenware, and it's almost ready to come out. This next step requires patience and a very steady pair of hands. Workers carefully begin unfastening the mold pieces and peeling them away from the clay shape inside. Because the greenware is still soft, almost like firm cheese, it can be dented or cracked with the slightest wrong move. Workers support each piece as the mold comes apart, gently separating the plaster from the clay surface. When the mold finally opens, out comes the rough shape of a toilet component. Bowl, tank, or passage piece, pale and white, holding its form but still delicate. Now comes assembly. The different pieces need to be joined together into a single toilet unit, and the method for doing this is surprisingly elegant. Workers mix up a small batch of very thin, watery clay slurry, almost like a clay glue. They brush this slurry onto the edges of each piece, then press the components together firmly. The liquid clay fills any gaps between the surfaces and bonds the pieces into one solid unit as it dries. But before that bond sets, workers need to clean up the joints. Over the next day or so, the assembled toilets are left to dry slowly in the open air of the factory. As they dry, they get harder and more stable, but the surface is still rough and uneven, covered in small bumps, tool marks, and imperfections. The first finishing step is wet smoothing. Workers dip sponges into water and run them firmly across every surface of the toilet: the bowl, the tank, the underside, every curve. This wets the outer layer of clay just enough to smooth it without softening the piece. Tiny bumps disappear, surface irregularities get worked out. The toilet starts to take on a cleaner, more uniform shape. Then it dries again, completely this time. Bone dry. This stage is called the bone dry state, and now the toilet is actually quite hard and stable, but it's also very brittle. Workers handle it carefully as they move it to the sanding station. Sanding a ceramic toilet by hand creates a serious amount of white dust. Workers wearing masks move sanding tools across every inch of the surface, reaching into curves, around the base, under the rim. The goal is a perfectly smooth finish with no texture variation at all, because whatever the surface feels like right now is what the glaze will lock in forever. After sanding, everything gets cleaned. Brushes and damp cloths remove every trace of clay dust from the surface. Any dust left on at this stage will be trapped under the glaze and create a visible defect in the finished product. Now the toilet moves into the spray glazing booth. This is one of the most visually satisfying stages of the whole process. Workers lift the toilet onto a rotating platform, a turntable, inside a ventilated spray booth. They pick up a high-pressure spray gun loaded with liquid glaze and begin coating the toilet in slow, even passes as it spins. The glaze goes on wet and milky white, covering the entire surface in a thin, even coat. Workers check constantly for any missed spots, thin patches, or drips. Right now, the glaze looks dull and chalky, but what happens next changes everything. Workers carefully lift each glazed toilet and carry it to the kiln loading area. These pieces are heavy. A full toilet unit weighs a significant amount, even before firing, and the glazed surface can't be touched or bumped without leaving a mark. Workers handle them with full-body effort, moving slowly and deliberately. Each toilet gets lifted onto a heavy-duty kiln car, a flat steel trolley designed to roll into the kiln. Workers arrange multiple units on each car, spacing them carefully so they don't touch each other during firing. Then the kiln car gets pushed slowly into the tunnel kiln, and this is where the transformation happens. Inside the tunnel kiln, temperatures climb to around 1,050 degrees Celsius. That's nearly 1,900 degrees Fahrenheit. At that temperature, something remarkable occurs. The clay particles fuse together at a molecular level, becoming a hard, dense, non-porous ceramic. And the glaze, that chalky white coat that went on dull and dry, melts and flows into a smooth, glassy surface. As it cools, it hardens into the brilliant, glossy white finish that a ceramic toilet is famous for. The kiln cars move slowly through the tunnel, spending many hours inside before emerging from the other end. Workers pull them out and leave them to cool. When they finally do, what comes off those cars no longer looks like anything made from mud. It's hard, smooth, white, and permanent. A ceramic toilet. The ceramic part is done, but the toilet isn't quite finished yet. Workers carry the fired units to the assembly benches, where the internal plumbing components get installed. Fill valves, flush valves, overflow tubes, and mounting hardware all get fitted inside the tank. Every connection gets checked for proper seating. Workers test each flush mechanism by hand before any water goes near it. Then comes the water test. A hose gets connected, the tank fills, and workers trigger the flush, watching the water flow, checking for leaks at every joint, confirming the flush path works exactly as the ceramic internal channels were designed to direct it. Any unit that doesn't pass gets set aside for inspection. The units that pass move to labeling. Workers apply brand stickers, model number labels, and quality control stamps to each piece, a record that this specific toilet was inspected and approved. Finally, the finished toilet gets wrapped in thick protective plastic and placed into a custom-built wooden crate. Each crate is sized exactly for the toilet model inside. Workers add padding, nail the crate shut, and stamp the exterior with shipping information. And that's it. A toilet that started as a pile of clay on a factory floor is now sealed in a crate, ready to travel to a store, a plumbing warehouse, or directly to someone's home, where it will be used every single day for the next 20 or 30 years, without anyone ever thinking about the 3 days and dozens of skilled hands it took to make it.
And that is how a ceramic toilet is made, entirely by hand, using techniques that haven't changed all that much in over 100 years. From raw clay and river stones to a perfect white ceramic finish. It's one of those manufacturing stories that makes you look at an everyday object in a completely different way. If you enjoyed this video, drop a like, share it with someone who would find this interesting, and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.